Ya cambiamos de evento, así que por favor, la novena generación los necesito con mayor energía. Buenas tardes, ¿cómo están? Excelente. Good evening, all. Thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you know how special you are being part of this, what I call an intimate chat, because that's what we're having. So I hope that you all bring your questions and start a conversation with Matt. Espero que todos vengan listos para hacer preguntas, para realmente interactuar. Por eso les teníamos comida y café para que no se fueran a dormir, ¿ok? Y que vea Matt un poco de la comunidad empresarial de nuestra región que tiene tanto para ofrecer y obviamente reconocer que tenemos mucho por aprenderle. So I want to welcome Matt. Thank you for coming all the way. Please come up to the stage. I couldn't learn your CV by heart. I'm very sorry. I know he'll give us an introduction later on, but he has wide experience in artificial intelligence and technology. And he's a very good counselor from what I hear, because you've been places despite of your young age. So thank you for coming all the way just to be here with us this evening. You can invite him later for some tacos or tequila so he knows, because he hasn't even been to a Mexican restaurant yet. He basically landed just to be here with us. So we truly appreciate it. And we hope you take advantages as well of this crowd. And well, this is the business community of our beautiful borderland. So make sure to shake them with whatever it is that you got to share with them, because yes, we're so eager to learn. And thank you for sharing that experience with us. Yes. So can we welcome Matt Adamczyk?
Thank you. See this on. Thank you. Thanks for having me. And apologies, my Spanish is rusty. This is my first time in Mexico. JJ and I crossed the border a couple hours ago. It's great to be here and appreciate having me. I am from a little further north in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Some of you might know us for our football team. Let's see if this... Of course, the clicker worked before and now it doesn't. There we go. You might know us for our football team, the Green Bay Packers. So I am I work for Microsoft. I come from a technical background. Spent the first half of my career out in Redmond, Washington, building core components of the Microsoft Office suite of products. So Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, OneNote, all of those applications. And then I had the opportunity to relocate back to my home state and work for Microsoft in residence of this new partnership with the Green Bay Packers called Titletown Tech. So I thought I'd share just a little bit about Titletown Tech just to kind of break the ice. And then we'll talk about AI, crack out maybe a couple of demos. And from there, hope to have an open discussion about any questions or thoughts that you all have. So Titletown Tech is a venture capital firm and studio in Green Bay, Wisconsin, born out of partnership between Microsoft and the Green Bay Packers. We invest in startups all over and looking to engage in the El Paso Juarez community as well. I'll talk a little bit about later about a new initiative we have as well that I think might be really applicable for this whole community. We focus on the strengths of Wisconsin, which having now visited El Paso and Juarez, I'm seeing a lot of parallels between our communities. A strong manufacturing base, a strong labor force, a lot of supply chain, movement of goods, movement of people. And Titletown Tech really focuses on the digital technology applications in those spaces. And so just to call out, specifically manufacturing, construction, supply chain, logistics, as well as a few other core elements to Wisconsin. So that's my little plug for my typical day job. But I've also, through my experiences building software for Microsoft, as well as advising these startups at Titletown Tech and across our Microsoft Tech Spark program, have been engaging in AI discussions across the country and across the world. And so just wanting to bring some of that. And I find the best way to do this is to just start out at the ground level. So if you don't know anything about AI right now, that's okay. If you know a lot about AI, just sit quietly for a little bit, and we'll get to the more advanced stuff in just a little bit. So first off, we're seeing headlines on both sides on AI. It's gonna save the world. It's gonna create all of this new value. Deadly robots are gonna rise up and kill us all. We have hyperbole on both sides, and the reality is none of that's true. And it's going to be a long cycle of iterations on adopting this new technology, finding the ways to derive value out of it. But it really helps to know what it is at its base. And today that's pretty muddied with the huge amount of jargon that exists amongst everything AI. So why do we have so much jargon? Let's start out at the most elementary pieces. Why do we have so much jargon? Well, humans, we're addicted to complexity. A colleague of mine made this slide showing that we put men on the moon before we put wheels on suitcases. And so we loved the complexity of getting people to the moon so much that we overlooked, simpler engineering tasks like we should make suitcases wheel through the airport. So we as humans are just addicted to this complexity, and that addiction creates confusion inherently. And so the truth of this is complexity is pretty easy and simple is really hard. And so good solutions have to distill down to simplicity. Now, we've been through this age of technology and this revolution of technology that we solve problems with data. And big data, little data. Big data, the definition just keeps changing on what was big data 10 years ago is little data today. And the reality is we just have to keep deriving value from the data sets that exist and boil those down to simple solutions that solve meaningful problems. We've been doing this for centuries now as humans. The tools that we have at our disposal have just evolved over time. And AI is just another one of those tools. So let's look at how has this evolved. So this really, really big number is how many bytes are in an exabyte. And this is how many bytes will be created on the planet during the duration of this talk. And so this is 1.5 million times the size of all of books in the Library of Congress. It is a difficult to imagine amount of data, and humans are just creating more and more data. We all have big data generators in our pockets with all the photos we take, the emails we send, all of the data that we're constantly capturing. Those data engines in our pockets produce 75 times as many pixels as the Hubble Space Telescope. Costs a heck of a lot less 34 years later. And just to show the scale of technology had changed. In 1987, it would have cost over $1 billion to store every book ever written. Today, you can do that with a credit card and about $1,000 on Azure or AWS or your favorite cloud. Data processing, of course, is getting cheaper and faster. About a $300 Xbox is the same as the best supercomputer in 1999, which cost $67 million. One more, and this gets to closer to home on AI. AI requires GPUs to do these complex calculations. Not that long ago, 20 years ago, Japan made a state-of-the-art Earth simulation supercomputer, cost about $700 million. As of last year, you could buy an NVIDIA desktop graphics card, pretty expensive, but it would be the same as 3 of those computers from 2004. And so the accessibility of this computation is becoming so much cheaper, so much easier, and we can solve more problems using all of these. So the key is, data goes up, cost goes down over time, and we just have to focus on needing enough data to solve a problem, having enough data to solve a problem, and then finding the simple solutions using that data. So now let's quickly get into the fun stuff, and that is what is AI? How do we demystify AI? Well, who here has heard machine learning, ML? Most of what we label AI today is truly machine learning. It's simulating human intelligence using machines. Now, the way that we create machine learning is creating algorithms that are able to use data, apply math, and create those algorithms that know a definition of success based on the data that we put into it. So step back for just a minute. What's an algorithm? Algorithms are just a series of computer instructions. If you're writing code, if anyone here has written a single line of code, and if you haven't yet, you should soon, because AI is making it incredibly easy to do so. But telling the computer what to do. ML just relies on mathematical models that tell the computer what to do. So let's go to a simple example. This is basic machine learning. If you take an elementary data science class, this is kind of square one. Imagine you are a bank. You have data from loaning people money, and the green squares represent those that repaid the money on their loans. The red X's represent those that defaulted. And our axes are the amount of the loan and the disposable income of the individual. And so if we plot that data, we can see there's a pretty, strong correlation, and we can draw a line. And now we have a formula. If everyone remembers algebra, we have our y equals ax plus b. That's a linear model that represents this line, and now we can use that model. And if someone comes to our bank and asks for money, we can ask them how much money they're asking for and how much money they make. And if they fall above the line, we give them the loan, and if they fall below the line, we don't. That's the simplest form of a model. This is what we would call a two-parameter model, because A and B are the two parameters that define that line. So just remember that's two parameters from Algebra 1. So in conventional programming in yesterday's world, we would spend a lot of time writing code to tell a computer what to do in every scenario that we think it might encounter. And in the new age of AI, we're using machine learning, and it is learning from the data that we feed into it, and learning how to manipulate the data that keeps getting fed into that machine learning or AI algorithm. So all we need is data, and then we have to know what we're aiming for. Having just data and not knowing anything doesn't help us. So now we talked about the two-parameter model. Let's talk about a large language model. Who here has heard the term large language model? So the large language model is what the class of model that includes things like ChatGPT and the other big AI models that are out there right now, Microsoft Copilot, etc. At its simplest form, a large language model guesses at what the next most probable word is in a string. So if I have a sentence, I woke up this morning and there was a beautiful blue, the model might think sky, bird, butterfly, flower. These would all be reasonable guesses at what I'm thinking of typing next. And these aren't new. So if you've used Google or Bing or any recent search engine, you've encountered these as well. Like why Green Bay, and it picks up on Green Bay Packers and all of these things related to what I might be asking Google about. So now we've gone from these simple language models that can guess the next word, can guess the autocorrect on your cell phone, to what word you're going to type next, to generating large amounts of text or imagery data. So GPT-4, that's the engine that lies underneath ChatGPT. We can break that down into these three terms. So the G is generative. You'll hear a lot about this age of generative AI, and that's simply these large language models, these multimodal models that are generating lots of new content based on a little bit of input, a little bit of data going into the models. The P is pre-trained. So this is a lot of text here, but essentially what we're doing is we're jamming a whole bunch of information, like all of the information on the entire internet, into these models so that it can train on and understand human knowledge and go back and reference the mathematical patterns that exist in that massive data set. And then finally, the T in GPT is transformer. This was a big breakthrough that researchers at Google made back in 2017 that allow us to train these ML models on significantly larger amounts of data and have unlocked the magic of GPT-4 and ChatGPT. That, along with a few other things that we'll talk about. So all these models do math in the background. The reality is you don't even need to know any of these things I'm telling you to be able to use them, but it does, I think, help to understand just some of the inner workings of these AI models. They behave like humans because, and we call them AI, artificial intelligence, because they're trained on human data. They're trained to think like humans because they read a lot of stuff that humans have already written. The key in that is you can train a model on all of the data, but it doesn't know what's true, what's false, what's real, what's fake. And so there are principles on how to use AI responsibly, how to be careful about ensuring that the output of the AI is not a hallucination or not a fabrication. We won't go deep into that in this talk. That's kind of a whole nother talk on responsible AI that we could do another time. So these hallucinations, real quick, are where the LLM might not know specific pieces to plug into its responses. And so instead, it will just make things up. And it won't be upfront about making those things up. One of the big cases that caught a lot of press early on was this lawyer case where two lawyers submitted court documents that were generated by ChatGPT, and it fabricated citations that didn't even exist, which in case law, it's not great when you're citing things that aren't real, and it got caught and they got into some trouble. And so I think that the biggest thing here, without going too deep, is don't trust the AI blindly. Use it as a tool. It's more, we like to call it a co-pilot at Microsoft. It's there to help you work better, faster, and make your work easier. And you have to do just that. You have to be able to use it as a tool that works alongside you. These can be very powerful. GPT-4 has famously passed the bar exam, passed a lot of US AP exams, that advanced placement exams that students take in high school, and all of that without any specialized training, just based on generalized training from the internet. And I'll show you an example. If you put in specialized information, it can get even more fine-tuned to your specific use case. So remember when we talked about our little equation that was 2 parameters large, or y equals ax plus b? GPT-4, the AI model that powers ChatGPT, is estimated to be around 1.7 or 2 trillion parameters. So really big number, really difficult to comprehend an equation with trillions of parameters, and you get into really advanced mathematics. But that's how we're able to stuff so much data into something like GPT-4 or other large language models, and it can create such diverse outputs from those inputs. So what does it take to build a model of this size? going to show a little video from NVIDIA had a big keynote a few months ago, and I love this animation that they used. Hopefully this loads on my connection. Just showing that the type of computer it takes to create these AI models. It might be a little glitchy, but so this is NVIDIA's new chip called Blackwell. They take two of these chips and they put them together, and you have the largest, two of the largest dies possible for a GPU. It's significantly faster than the previous fast GPU chip. And you put one of these onto a controller, and you have 20 petaflops of computational power. And I can talk about that in a bit. But they don't just take one, they take two, they put those together, and they make them act as if they're one chip. And those go on the circuit board and become the Blackwell super chip. Now they put two of those into the server. And then you actually need really fast computers inside of the server to make everything talk to each other. So you have computers that are just dedicated to the networking and signal processing. And now you stack a whole bunch of those computers together. Some more networking to make it all talk with each other really well. NVIDIA's invented this new system that everything just kind of plugs in together and works. And so now you've got a rack that can do a whole bunch of computation. So 1.4 exaflops. Now you take a bunch of those racks and you link them together with all that fancy networking that they showed. And it gets really hot, so NVIDIA says you probably need to cool it really well. So you have a lot of energy in one small space. And then you put a bunch of these in one building. And so that's a data center of 32,000 of those GPUs. And so NVIDIA talks about that. They say for $2 billion, that computer can be yours. But you also need a place to put it, which costs, a lot of money as well. And then that computer could train GPT-4 in about 3 months. So it still takes that much computation over a very long time. And to put it into context, the first computer that OpenAI made specific to training AI models came out in 2016, and it could do it was 20 teraflops. So it was 1/1000th of one of those chips. And now we've advanced just in the last 7 years to creating supercomputers of this size that can power, all of the AI that we're talking about. So the other key of this is there are, just by its nature, very few companies on the planet that will create the scale of AI capability. But the great news is, just like we talked about, you can store all of the planet's books for $1,000 on a cloud. You can access all of this through your favorite cloud provider at a relatively low cost overall. So putting all that to work, at the end of the day, we get to a text box. So raise your hand if you've used ChatGPT so far, or any other large language model. Yep, so most hands are up. Excellent. I would have been worried if no hands went up. And so I talk about this era as talking to aliens. Who's seen the movie Arrival? Has anyone seen, or maybe read the book? I think there's a novel as well. If you haven't, the movie essentially goes, spoiler alert, cover your ears. I think the movie is like 8 years old. One day aliens arrive, and the race is on to see who can talk to the aliens the best. And they speak in these ink blot things on a glass pane, and it's really complex. It turns out the aliens are these multi-dimensional creatures, and the main character breaks through and understands the multi-dimensionality of their language. And then they're able to unlock all of these scientific advancements based on the knowledge sharing from the aliens. The past year and a half has been very similar in that all of these large language models are essentially an alien technology, and the race has been on to see who can talk to this new technology the best, who can communicate, who can ask the right questions. That's why we talk about things like prompt engineering, which I think over time will not really be a thing, but we're in this phase of no one knows how to ask the best questions of the AI. And those that do will be able to derive tremendous value at a low cost out of the AI. So when I was at Microsoft as an engineer, we always went through these exercises saying, we've got a lot of data. We've got billions of people using Microsoft Office. If we had a data scientist, we could implement a cool ML powered feature. And like you could kind of see the writing on the wall as a PM and be like, yeah, if only someone figured out the math behind all this, I know all the pieces are there. We could do fancy autocorrect. We could do all these cool things. And the reality was, even at Microsoft, we didn't have a whole lot of data scientists. They were usually tied up on more important problems than toy features, and none of these things got implemented. Over the last 18 months, all of that's changed, though. I should have changed the slide because it's not just English. You can use ChatGPT with, I think it's 26 languages right now. Spanish, of course, is one of the stronger languages. Those just became the most powerful programming languages. If you can speak and write in any language, you can now code. And those foundational models are essentially cheap or free data science that you can create these AI capabilities within your own applications. No data scientists needed, no PhD needed. All that you need to know is basic engineering and how to use APIs, how to ask the right questions. From a startup perspective, I have a colleague that coined a great term that the era of the non-technical founder is over. There will only be lazy founders. And this is speaking from a guy that is not a technical person, but over the course of a long weekend was able to create a prototype of a website that is the MVP for a company that hadn't existed 2 weeks earlier, and was able to take that prototype in front of customers, get feedback immediately. And he didn't even know how to write code, but he knew how to have conversations with ChatGPT, how to work with the tools, how to harness the power of a few other tools and build a real product that maybe you wouldn't want to put it into production, but you can get a heck of a lot further than you could before. And the cost to put those in production just decreased significantly. So a couple other things. This is not a fancy slide because I just added this. If you haven't seen the news, about a week ago, OpenAI announced a bunch of advancements with their GPT-4o. One of the few things to call out with this. So it's an iteration on top of GPT-4. The O is omnimodal. And so we talked about the GPT-3, 3.5, and GPT-4 as being large language models that could be multimodal. And you might have put in a photo before, or you've used the voice to text feature, talk to the AI. The big change here is they've actually trained the large language model to inherently understand photos and videos and audio. And so previously, I'll use audio as the kind of easy example. You would talk into your phone, it would convert that to text, and then it'd call an API just like if you had typed that text. And then it's prompting with text. And then it would come back, and then it could say that text back to you using a text to voice API on the phone. And that type of back and forth would usually take 4 to 6 seconds. Now it'll stream the audio to the server, and the model can actually understand the audio. It doesn't even convert it to text. It just understands the meaning of the audio, just like your brain doesn't convert everything that you hear to text. You just understand language. And now it can go back and forth in that interaction in about 300 milliseconds, which is same as having a conversation with a human. And so that is a radical change. And the same holds true for video, photos. If you haven't looked at it, you should go out to the OpenAI website and watch some of their new demo videos. It's really a stunning advancement. And the other key is they made it faster and they made it cheaper. And so they roughly are saying twice as better and half the cost. And so costs keep coming down on using these APIs, using these features, which means the access is just going to broaden. These tools are very, very easily available. And then they added more information into the training and made it a little bit better overall. So at Microsoft, we believe AI will reinvent every industry. And the question really is, what does that mean to your specific industry or specific company, specific use case that you're thinking about? How do you take this cheap, extremely powerful technology and apply it to your domain? And I challenge everyone, because if you don't do it, someone else will. And if you feel like you're already behind or it's overwhelming, I've told people over the last year, and it continues to be true, if you pick up ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, any one of these LLMs today, and you really play with it for the next month, you'll be ahead of 90% of people, because things are evolving so quickly. It's evolving so quickly, I can't even keep my slides up to date all the time. That you just have to play with it and apply it and keep iterating. So now a small plug for something we just announced a week and a half ago up in Wisconsin, and would love to see connection down to this market, to the Bridge Accelerator, to our friends in El Paso and Juarez. We're adding a Microsoft AI Co-Innovation Lab in Wisconsin, but it's going to be focused on manufacturing and adjacent industries. These co-innovation labs, there were 6 of them. This is the 7th co-innovation lab in the world. There are 3 in the United States, and they really focus on working alongside a company, whether it's a single entrepreneur, founder, a small business, or some of the largest enterprises in the world, and focus in on a problem in their business and help them prototype an AI solution to that problem. And so if selected, and there's an application process that our co-innovation lab team runs, but they work alongside the company, and you leave that lab experience with a working prototype that is your own IP that you can take and integrate into your company. So here are the broad locations. Like I said, we see a lot of similarities between our region up in Wisconsin and the Midwest. In fact, a lot of the same logos, even walking around the facility here today with Ricardo, seeing some familiar logos that we have up in Green Bay that you have down here. And so would love to extend that connection with our Co-Innovation Lab program as well. So now I'm going to pop into a fairly short demo just to show a capability or two. Think of some questions while I'm showing this demo. Okay, so it sounds like most people have used ChatGPT or one of the similar. I'm supposed to talk about Copilot more. I'll do my little plug. Microsoft has this thing called Copilot. It's basically ChatGPT meets Microsoft 365. It is the best tool for businesses, for enterprises. It creates a security and responsibility layer, so it keeps your data perfectly private, secure. It's the best scalable solution when you're bringing this technology into your business. But, if I slip my Microsoft hat off a little bit, ChatGPT tends to have the most unconstrained, raw, newest innovations available. And so what I like to do is play with some of those new capabilities in the ChatGPT or the OpenAI API environments. And then when I'm ready to bring those to an actual use case that I'm going to build in a product or give to all my employees, I'll bring that into the Microsoft environment so that I know I'm secure, my data stored in the right place. I'm not, doing anything sketchy in that realm. So we'll show just a little demo within the ChatGPT environment, and a lot of this is available via APIs. If you don't know how to access an API, what should you do? Ask ChatGPT, because ChatGPT knows how to access APIs. And if you don't know how to set up your development environment to access APIs, what should you do? Ask ChatGPT, because it'll tell you how to set up the environment to then ask it how to use APIs. So I think one of the biggest things is just it's okay to not know any of these answers, and chances are ChatGPT can walk you through it. And don't be afraid of doing just that. One of the things that I think is still very revolutionary and a little bit underutilized right now are these specialized or custom GPTs. Has anyone built their own GPT? You raise your hand. So just a couple. So if I'm in Chat GPT here and I click up on my name, I can go to my GPTs. I might need to refresh. Of course, it's not working right now. Here we go. Okay. So I can go into explore GPTs over here and I can create, actually, I'll just click on create. So you can create a GPT. And what this does is you can create a special instance of ChatGPT where you feed it in a bunch of information. Oh, and I can zoom in. Apologies for it being so small. So you can feed in specialized information, whether that's maybe industry specific information, proprietary company data, little asterisks, make sure you have the right security boundaries here. I'm not responsible for those things. You can feed it a whole bunch of information and create a specialized version of ChatGPT that can do very specific tasks for you. And so to create a new GPT, you do so just by having a conversation with the ChatGPT builder. And so you don't even have to know how to code to create these custom GPTs. That's simply a conversation. And then if you want to make specific modifications, they have a slightly fancier UI here that is not that fancy. And you can just put in a whole bunch of text, a bunch of files, and give it instructions on how you want this GPT to behave. I think it's much easier to show you one that I've already made. And I realize that this example is probably not as applicable as my usual audience in the northern Midwest. Has anyone here used a snowblower before? JJ has. So we get a lot of snow up north, and we have these big snow blowers. Is everyone familiar with the concepts? Okay, lawnmower type of thing. They break quite a bit because they get debris inside the snow blower. They're small engines that you neglect and don't maintain as much as you should, and so you have to fix them. And usually you don't find out they're broken until you've got 2 feet of snow out in the driveway. So I thought, what if we made a GPT to be an assistant with my snowblower? And so what I did, and I can go in here and click edit my GPT. And I had a whole discussion with a GPT builder, and this is kind of a synthesis of that discussion. But the two things I want to highlight is I just went to the website for the manufacturer of the snowblower I own. I downloaded the owner's manual. I downloaded the really long service manual. It's like 120 pages of very intricate documentation about how to repair small engines, things of that nature. I uploaded those and I said, hey, here's some PDFs with a whole bunch of information about the snowblower. ingest that and become an expert on all of that. Now I can click on one of my starter questions here and just say, hey, my snowblower isn't working. What should I do? And it synthesized all that information from those PDFs, and it won't make things up because I've told my custom GPT, don't make things up, only reference information that I've given you. Don't go off a crazy tangent and start talking about things that you should not be talking about. Just stick to snowblowers. And it'll give me a whole list of different information that I should go and do. Now, I don't have it all teed up, so I won't go deeper into this one, but I've also done demos where, for instance, it tells me I should replace a shear pin in the snowblower. And I can upload a photo of a shear pin and ask it, is this a shear pin? And it'll say, well, yes, that does look like a shear pin. You need Arian's part number, 59230 to make sure you have the exact perfect shear pin for your snowblower. But that is generally what a shear pin looks like, and it's able to see, see that, see that photo and understand it. One other that's a little more real for a business productivity scenario. This will be my last piece here. Within Titletown Tech, we created a few iterations of this now, called the VC Insight Analyst or our AI Analyst. So as a venture capital firm, we look at a lot of companies. I think last year we looked at something like 4,000 or 5,000 startups to make about a dozen investments. And it's the nature of our business. And every one of those startups typically sends us a pitch deck that's a PDF. And so what we did was we created a GPT, fed in all of the information about what Titletown Tech invests in, what size company, what types of industries, what so different like thesis documents of what we invest in, and told it should act essentially as an intern for us, look at these documents, understand our thesis, and be able to take in a pitch deck PDF and give us things like a 1-paragraph summary of the company and a general indication of if we should deep dive into that potential investment or if it's likely a pass. And none of this is decision making on behalf of the venture firm, but it can in some cases let you go through that information so much quicker because we can feed in, sometimes 60-page slide decks into the AI and just give it the, hey, should we go deeper into this or not? And then if it says yes, like what types of things should we research? And we're able to go through and do deeper research. In this realm, one other example we had was a member of our team was going deep into a company, and it had to do with some chemistry and chemicals. And the U.S. EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, had published this gigantic Excel spreadsheet. It was the most complex spreadsheet I've ever seen. It was huge, so complex that they published a 63-page PDF explaining how the Excel spreadsheet works, which I'd never seen before. And we had one little question that we wanted to get out of this huge, complex set of data. So we uploaded the spreadsheet to ChatGPT. We uploaded the PDF and said, here's a PDF that explains the spreadsheet. And within about 10 minutes of a conversation with ChatGPT, it analyzed the spreadsheet based on the PDF. And we got down to the answer that, frankly, we would have just not even gone down that rabbit hole because it wouldn't have been worth 10 hours of someone's time to try and suss through and understand all of that. So I think the kind of conclusion here is these custom GPTs can be super powerful to feed in your own proprietary data. I've seen people talk about the future where instead of handing over 1,000-page machine manual with a manufacturing machine as an example, they'll hand over a GPT. And that way, when my machine breaks, I don't have to page through this huge manual. I just have to ask questions of an AI. Things of that nature are coming. And then I think the thing down the road that is not too far away, but is coming, is having these custom GPTs also act as agents on our behalf. And so boxing them into really small problem spaces, but letting them go and do specific tasks for us from a productivity perspective, and being an even more powerful co-pilot that can work in parallel to what you're doing. So that's the conclusion of my part, and would love questions from anyone and everyone. I can repeat it.
Okay, you said on your own that when you created your own GPT, you told ChatGPT to not make up, no, make up stuff because it tends to do it. How do you make sure it doesn't, and how do you tell it to not make up things?
Yeah, so it definitely is not a certainty that it won't hallucinate, it won't make things up. But in general, everything that ChatGPT does has a probability behind it. And so if you're asking it questions and it really doesn't know an answer and it might hallucinate, it might have a response that it feels like it has a 60% probability. And if I tell it in my custom GPT, like, don't guess, don't, like, be pretty certain about everything. And it's just that, it's just telling it in pure language, not to do those things. It'll behind the scenes crank up that filter to, okay, I want to make sure I'm like 94% sure that things are accurate rather than anything below that. And if everything is below my threshold, I'll just be honest and say, I don't know the answer to that question. Can you ask a different question or give me more data? And you can coach it into doing that. I think one of the keys is really testing testing your GPT and iterating on it. Wait, and one last thing too, sorry. Don't be afraid to throw away your GPT. It's like these GPTs take like 20 minutes to make, and you iterate on them. And then if you delete it, make a new one, your new one's going to be better than your first one because you learned how to coach the GPT from the beginning. So I always recommend doing that.
Thank you. Hi, Matt, Victor Lozano. For me, AI was only on movies, right? Sci-fi movies 10, 15 years ago. So my question to you is when we're going to see this kind of technology implanted in our brains,
So this is a personal view of Matt. I think we're a long ways away from that. I truly believe, there's a lot of hype around augmented reality, virtual reality. Sci-fi has painted these pictures of like, well, if augmented reality was just a contact lens, it would be so much better. I don't think the physics are really going to be possible to do that type of miniaturization of augmented reality just with bending light and complex pieces like that. So I do think like we won't fully see the possibilities of those types of sci-fi applications until you can interface with the human brain. Now, what might help us understand the human brain like we've never been able to before? AI, all of these mathematical understandings. If we can feed enough data in, there was one project. Don't quote me on this, but the Human Genome Project took decades, and someone fed the human genome research into GPT-4, and like it could do all of the same research in a matter of hours or days. And so these scientific problems become significantly easier with those advancements. And so I would say we're 100 years away from that, but maybe AI shrinks that time.
Well, in the meantime, while everyone else thinks of their questions, I have one. So how do you I don't know if there exists a set of rules that limit what you can do with ChatGPT. Let's say, just crazy thought on the top of the head. If I plan the perfect murder and I don't want to get caught, I can train my ChatGPT to do that. Wouldn't I be able to?
Yeah, so OpenAI puts a lot of safeguards in, and you have to be a little bit careful. I have a founder colleague that was doing legitimate work, and he was working on a little bit of a toy problem to see how good ChatGPT could solve this problem, and that was gun detection. And so if you feed in a bunch of photos that have firearms in it, how well can ChatGPT detect if there's a firearm in the picture? There's very valid security use cases to do something like that. and he got a scary message like right away saying, "Hey, if you do this again, we're gonna ban you." And so like they have some security measures in place. And this isn't a new thing. Like there have been these restrictions in place for good reasons for a long time on a lot of technologies. I think we go a little bit further on the Microsoft side to limit it even more so that nothing is damaging to your company specifically. But in theory, like we talk about this in the context of tools and weapons. Everything is, can be both a tool and a weapon. A shovel, I can dig a great hole, or I can bash someone on the back of the head with it. And it's a matter of how you put it to use. Unfortunately, there will be actors on the planet that will use these AI advancements for bad. And we need to make sure that we use it for good.
I'll make a commercial and tell everyone to get that book because yes, that's true. It comes over there and it's really good. Tools and weapons. Anyone else has a question? ¿Alguien más?
One
No?
other book I'll plug that just came out from our chief data scientist is called AI for Good, from Juan Lavista Ferris. He does a lot of our AI for Good work within Microsoft on solving difficult scientific problems and things like disaster recovery. His book came out just a couple weeks ago, and it's a great kind of follow on to Brad Smith's Tools and Weapons.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Hello. Well, it's a reality that when we all started hearing about AI, people got afraid, but I'm going to lose my job, et cetera, et cetera. But we all know that that's not true anymore. And it's just a tool that's like you mentioned before. But my question will be, you mentioned prompt engineer. Okay, so when we started familiarizing with the technology, we started seeing these jobs in the tech industry. I'm hiring a prompt engineer who's an expert in prompt engineering. that will be my question. It's more like your opinion about that.
Yeah, I think I think there was a snap reaction to that, and like I need to hire people that know how to ask good questions. And the answer is you probably already have people that know how to ask good questions. They just need to like have hands on the tool and be able to use it and iterate on using it. The other piece, getting a little more technical, is meta prompts are becoming a bigger thing. And so I'm going to go on a slight technical tangent, but the general gist is when I type in a chat GPT specifically is a little more raw. So it's taking that text and prompting the large language model. It does a little bit of what we call meta prompting in the background, and that's adding on or adding context to my prompt that I don't even see. I don't know that it's happening in the background. It also includes things like the safety filters so that, hey, even if I think you're asking a fine question, but the large language model sends me something back that has like neo-Nazi rhetoric or something, I'm going to filter that and not even let it surface because that shouldn't have come out of the model. And we're going to take another iteration before I show you anything. And you're just going to think your internet connection is a little bit slow for the moment. So things like that happen in the background. Even more advanced things like Microsoft Copilot do the meta prompting and what we call grounding in all of your data. And so you can ask a very simple question like, what was that proposal that my manager had about the new El Paso thing? And like, it's very little context. It's not a good question. And I should just be asking my colleague JJ about it. But it's late at night and I'll just ask the AI. What Copilot does is it grounds it in all of my information that I have access to within my company. And so it knows the context of every Word document, PowerPoint deck, Excel spreadsheet that I have access to, whether it's on my OneDrive or JJ's OneDrive or my manager's OneDrive. And it can go through and essentially meta prompt the large language model, which knows nothing about any of those things. And it'll layer it in behind the scenes on the prompt. And then what I'll get back is this very nice paragraph about links with a few documents that I should go click on, and it'll deep link me to those documents and be able to explain those with further questions. So it's a long-winded way of saying prompt engineer, bit of a transient thing. We all have to get really good at asking good questions of our AI assistants and co-pilots. And the reality is the systems are going to be able to do things under the covers that we don't even have to worry about, that will be as good as all the advanced prompt engineering you see. In the meantime, watch some YouTube videos to learn more about asking good questions, especially with things like image generation. That's a little more difficult to get exactly what you're trying to generate.
Hello. How can there's any limit for the AI, or how intelligent it can be?
Yeah, so the biggest limit that we're going to hit is having enough data. And I, researchers that I talk to think that we're actually getting close to those limits right now based on what data is publicly available. Now there's a lot of privately available data that can be layered in the right ways and all of that. But the big piece is, so if just rounding, if GPT-4 is a 2 trillion parameter model, to create a 4 trillion parameter model needs something like the squared difference in data size. So you need, just making up numbers, you need like 8 times as much data to create a model that's twice as big. And so the data needs don't scale linearly, they scale exponentially. So I think we'll be limited by that. And then I think, there will always be a place for the human, because we can't just rely on AIs that are trained on everything that's already happened. We have to still create, and the AI will never be able to create. It has to, it'll emulate creation based on what it knows, but it won't be able to create novelty.
Thanks. John Herrera here from New Discovery Agency. We do AR, VR, and we're starting to step into combining that with computer vision and AI specifically. So this is way important for what we're doing. And my question is more, kind of get your thoughts on, we've recently been integrating, we've been playing with large language models that are run internally on our servers. So we like going to Hugging Faces or any of these platforms that have already pre-trained models, downloading that and running through all the steps of implementing that on premise. Do you think that's something that is worth the effort on maintaining and really building on very specific goals or objectives within a company? Or at some point, will this just become available on a secure cloud where your data is secure and your company specific information is pretty secure, and just rather wait for Azure to do this or any of the other platforms? Because a custom GPT at this point is not completely secure as far as the information that you're sharing. It becomes part of the kind of like the global information, right?
So when you go through the OpenAI models, if you have an enterprise account, you can lock it down on your custom GPT. Personal accounts, I think information goes into the broader model. I'm not a salesperson, but we already have that on Azure. And so you can use Azure OpenAI services, and you can access most things, at least within a couple of months from OpenAI announcing them on the Azure OpenAI platform. And the difference is it's completely siloed. And so it is within your environment. You can upload all of your proprietary company data. It does not leave that silo. Nothing goes to OpenAI. Everything resides in your own tenant on Azure. And so you can do things with complete assurance of that data security. And then you can also layer on some of those protection layers so that your AI doesn't go haywire. At the core of the question, it is interesting, and I've worked with a few startups that have wrestled with this question of, well, GPT-4 is really expensive. It's not inconsequential cost per API call that I make to GPT-4. Some of the open source models that I can run on my own are significantly lower cost, but not nearly as high a fidelity. And so how do I fine tune an open source model and have something that works well enough? Or do I rely on what GPT-4 can just do, but it's really expensive? I have two things to say. One is, as of today, make sure you don't create a price model that bankrupts your company if you accidentally hit scale. I think that's happened in the market already a few times where, hey, if I'm selling my app for $5, but if everyone starts using it a whole lot, my AI bill is going to go up way higher than $5 per user. It can create problems. So make sure you price appropriately. But my own opinion is build on the best AI models because the cost of this computation is going to come down dramatically. So far, if you look back the past 6 years, we're seeing overall in the industry a Moore's law, which Moore's law for CPUs for processors was a doubling every 2 years of speed. AI models are seeing 10x improvement every 2 years. And so if you lock into an open source model today, that's already typically about 18 months out of date from where the best in class GPT-4 is. In another year or two, you'll be, 1% of what the capabilities are today. Or the capabilities that you would have needed will be so low cost relative to what it was when you first started. So a lot of trade-offs, a lot of things to weigh there.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, well then I have a bunch of questions, but they're too dark for me to share in public apparently, because no one else is as interested as I seem to be. Well, then can we appreciate Matt with a hand clap, por favor, un aplauso.
Thank you.
He flew in all the way from, where were you? Milwaukee.
Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Me platicó que hasta manejó 1 hora entre aeropuertos para poder llegar más rápido. So we truly appreciate the effort to join us tonight. And well, they probably don't have any questions right now because that was a lot of information. I'm still trying to figure out how the room with all the computers work. But yeah, I'm pretty sure you'll be hearing back from many of them soon, especially because we have some tech companies that I'm pretty sure are taking a lot of homework home. So
and plug to my colleagues, Omar, who wasn't able to be here tonight, and JJ, who are both local to the region and work on Microsoft Tech Spark. And if you don't know them, they can connect you to me or answer some of your questions themselves as well.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you
Thanks.
to everyone who was online. We'll see you on Thursday. We stay with the bridge. Nos vemos el jueves. E igualmente recuerden que el viernes vamos a tener sesiones 1-a-1 con Iliana. Y el 31 de mayo tenemos el mock-up, el Demo Day mock-up, que es donde todas las empresas de nuevo, ya ahora sí con todo el feedback que han recibido, van a revisar su pitch de ventas y su presentación. ¿Ok? Entonces espero que también se lleven eso de tarea. ¿Ok? Muchísimas gracias a todos por venir, gracias por su tiempo. Y pues aquí va a estar Matt si alguien lo quiere invitar por un tequila y por unos tacos, ¿eh?